Well, welcome back. This nice, not so humid morning as last week. Thank goodness, right? It's a nice weather this morning. And first of all, we want to finish some unfinished business this morning. If you recall last week, we ended with an exercise that we learned, oh yeah, when we gather, we study the scriptures together, we pray together, we worship together, but we also spur one another on to love and good deeds, or stimulate one another on to love and good deeds. And so we made it a goal last week to do a good deed collectively, and that was to prepare some gift boxes, bags, whatever you might want to call them, for the two campuses, to the two schools that share our campus with us. One is Southern California Regional Occupational Center, also known as SCROC, and the other is Ambassador School. So if you have the snacks that we asked you to bring, go ahead and put one of them over there and one of them over there, and don't forget there is a card for each one of them. You can just sign your name, or you can have some sort of wish, good welcome back to school kind of well wish on the card. Just to represent that we are all wishing them a great year and that we're appreciative of being at this campus with them. Well, that's our whole welcome back to school business. But this exercise, it's not going to look that nice because we just have boxes. Okay, and there's our two campuses. But this exercise was just an example of our launch series. This series we've been in it where we're hitting, that's the card, we're hitting really all the fundamentals, the practical ways of living as followers of Jesus. Or as we've been saying, equipping ourselves with the practical tools to get off the launch pad and be like functioning examples of the love of Christ to the people around us. And so we've mentioned our series has centered around this rubric, really, this model. Basically all the topics that Jesus taught his followers so that they could be launched into the world as followers of his. First, of course, Jesus taught about himself. Talked about that this was principally what Jesus taught about, who he was and what he was doing, that he came not to be served, but to serve and give his life a ransom for our own, exchanging his perfect, innocent life for our guilty rebellion, and dying on the cross for us. Okay, there's an amen for Teddy Bear. We talked about how that sacrifice is the fuel for everything that we do in life. Jesus is the center. And then Jesus then teaches us about how he changes every dimension of everything that we do. First of all, this whole vertical dimension of our lives, our relationship with God, how we speak to God through prayer and how God communicates to us through the scriptures. And then this horizontal relationship of just all the people in our lives, the people that we know who are believers in Jesus, how we relate to them. And that was what last week was about. We stimulate one another to love and good deeds. And how we reach out and love those who do not yet believe in Jesus. How we share the gospel with them. And so these welcome boxes back there were just extensions of, hey, what do we do when we gather together? What's our fellowship like? This week we're sliding into the very end of the launch series, so we wanted to begin with another exercise, really kind of a prompt. Here we go. Another thing with a big pen, right? And the prompt is going to be very, very simple. It's going to ask not each of us, but whoever has something, to look at yourself and ask yourself, I know, you can't see this behind this, but the question is, what am I prepared to do? What am I prepared to do? That question paired with the contents on your person. You may have a wallet, you may have a backpack, you may have a purse or handbag of some sort, but you will identify something that you have presently on your person and tell us, what does that make you prepared to do? Little abstract. I will give you an example. What do I have on my person? I have my driver's license, right? So I found someone that looks suspiciously like me. No, he's just some Asian dude, right? And he's Asian. I think we all look the same. Anyway, and what does that make me? That makes me prepared To drive, right? What? How do you spell license? License. Okay, that prepares me to drive. I can also buy alcohol. I can also identify myself to authorities, right? Because I have a driver's license. Okay, I got a big marker pen. Big pen. Prepares me to write big. Okay. See what it is? Okay. Shoot. What do you have on your person?
A watch.
Okay, watch. That prepares me to
Tell time.
tell time, but hopefully also be on time. For some, it makes no matter at all. Okay, what else?
Keys.
Keys,
Entry.
entry. Also, sometimes lock. Okay, anything else? Keep going.
Credit card.
Oh, credit cards.
Device.
Ruin my credit. Okay, buy things.
Cash.
Okay, cash. Pay. Come on, I know you ladies have much more in your purses.
Tissue.
Passport card.
You have a passport card?
Yeah.
What is that? What is a passport card? It's in lieu of a passport in a card?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know so much. Go other countries. Wow, really a passport card? Yes, someone.
Tissue.
Tissue. I'm prepared to be sad.
Or comfort.
Comfort.
Telephone.
Telephone. Yeah, come on. That should have been the. Oh, we're too
It was
old.
said like 4 times.
Oh, really? Okay. I should have a hearing aid. Well, this is much more than just call people, right? Call, text,
Google.
bank,
Research.
navigate.
AI.
AI, live. Okay,
Get
right?
distracted.
Yeah, our whole life in our pockets.
Insurance card.
Insurance card. Yes.
And car insurance card.
Card. I am ready to be sick. I am ready to be in an accident. Yeah, it's important. Yeah. What else?
My to-do list.
To-do list. Yes.
Grocery list.
And grocery list.
Yeah.
Okay. To do. And I'm ready to be guilty. Or feel guilty for not doing it. Okay.
Camera.
Camera, which is your telephone. This is camera. Pick. Choose. Do you actually have a camera that's not attached to your phone?
Not on me, but sure.
Okay, yeah.
I'm keeping that in the car.
Oh, reading glasses. I'm prepared to look older. When I read, right? I wear my reading glasses. People think you're 10 years older than you. Okay. You're able to see and look older. Okay, last one. Coffee. Coffee and camcorder. You're making me panic now. What? Like right now?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And coffee. Coffee's just life. I'm ready to live.
Water.
And water. Hydrate. Okay. Wow, you're right. We got a lot of stuff on us. Right, you leave the house, usually, Adam Sandler has a song called Wallet, Phone, Keys. I chant wallet, phone, keys when I leave the house, right? Because those are Nobody else does that. Just me. The wallet. Wallet, phone, keys. Now it's wallet, phone, keys, glasses. And now it's wallet, phone, keys, glasses. Because I need reading glasses as well as distance glasses. I'm a sad man. But yeah, okay, where are we? Okay, we're going to progress through our verse of study to this. We're going to see where this is relevant. But before we can get to this week's verse, as we do, we've committed ourselves to memorizing all of the verses in our study, this launch study that we've been doing. So, as we do, first we review last week's verse, and then we get to this week's verse. And last week's verse was Hebrews 10, 24 and 25, which we'll do this together, right? Hebrews 10, 24 and 25. And let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, not forsaking our own assembling together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, as all the more as you see the day drawing near. It's actually harder for me to read it than to memorize. Okay, let's do that again, but without that. Okay? Hebrews 10, 24 and 25. And let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, not forsaking our own assembling together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Fantastic. Okay, that was last week's verse about fellowship. This week, it's about why and how we share the news of Jesus with other people. And it's going to be 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. So read this with me. 1 Peter 3:15. But sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account of the hope that is in you, for the hope, with gentleness and reverence. Okay, this one is another one that has a nice cadence, so it should be easier. Let's try that without the first line, which is sanctify Christ as Lord. Okay, ready? 1 Peter 3:15. But sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence. Okay, we'll try that again, but without the second line. 1 Peter 3:15. But sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence. Hey. Are we in that? I think we're getting that. Okay, we'll try the next one. 1 Peter 3:15. But sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence. Okay, this is the long stretch here. To give an account for the hope that is in you. Let's try this. 1 Peter 3:15, but sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence. You guys have cards with you. You can do this later in the week. Let's see if we can get to this, okay? 1 Peter 3:15, but sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence. Okay, remember, if you haven't located your little memory verse cards, there's a couple more back there if you need a backup. Okay, as we do, before we get to this verse of the week, we always want to study the context of the verse. We've learned that really sheds a lot of light in our study of the scriptures. And of course, we know it's 1 Peter. Who wrote the book of 1 Peter? Well, obviously Peter, right? And if we read any of the biographies of Jesus, we know that Peter is a pretty main player in the life of Christ. We're familiar with him. When anybody speaks up from the point of view of the disciples, usually it's this guy, Peter. Peter has the most outspokenness. He's the most outspoken. He's kind of the most memorable of the disciples. And Peter's called Peter because Jesus actually does highlight Peter. He gives Peter his very own nickname. Peter's real name is Simon. Shimon, right? But Jesus tells Simon that because he identifies Jesus as the Christ, the Messiah of Israel, that Simon will be the rock, the Cephas, or the Petros, the Peter of the church, that the church will be built upon. What does this mean? Peter serves kind of as a first stone in the church, right? He's like not the cornerstone, because that's Jesus. Maybe he's the second stone, right? He's the first person to stand up and give a sermon about Jesus. He's the first person to give an invitation to a big crowd about Jesus being the Messiah. He's the first person to offer baptism in the name of Jesus to a large gathering of people who are hearing about Jesus. Peter becomes one of the first leaders of the church, along with the other disciples. He's kind of a first mover here. But also, that means something else. Peter is also the first to be persecuted. He's the first person to be tried for his faith. He's the first to get jailed for telling people about the resurrection of Jesus. He's the first to suffer physically. He gets flogged for telling people about Jesus, sharing about Jesus being the Messiah. So Peter's pretty first in many things. He's, like we said, a first mover. But Peter also is the first sufferer. He's the first sufferer. That's our author, Peter. Our author's experience, though, fits like hand in glove with the audience of this book. The audience of this book is largely Gentiles, right? Peter addresses the letter to those who reside as aliens, scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, who are chosen. These are all areas throughout Asia Minor, which is like modern-day Turkey, which were predominantly Gentile. It's a Gentile church. And what this predominantly Gentile group of churches is experiencing is this: persecution. They're out there in a largely pagan culture, right? They're worshiping Diana or Artemis or Zeus, and they have received this news of Jesus. They have welcomed him into their lives. They've been forgiven and recognized the sacrifice that Jesus has given on their behalf, and the cross and the resurrection. But now, in living the life of Christ in their context, they're sticking out. And they're experiencing the pressure of being different than everybody else around them. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 6 hints at this, saying that though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been distressed by various trials. Chapter 2, verse 19 tells us that followers of Jesus had to bear up under sorrows when suffering unjustly. Chapter 3, verse 16 in 1 Peter warns that the believers are being reviled and slandered. There's a whole section of this book, just like verses upon verses, about authorities who are oppressing them on account of their differentness and their faith. So what does this add up to? Well, a whole group of churches under fire, undergoing persecution. And who has so much experience about being harassed and persecuted? Peter. Hand in glove, right? He is the man to address these people. And so Peter, this seasoned veteran of experiencing persecution and hardship, he's giving a master class in how to get through these times of difficulty and to suffer as Jesus suffered. And his one strategy, he's got one strategy for these oppressed Christians. That is this: a new perspective. Big, zoomed out picture of how God works and what God is doing as we are persecuted. Perspective. This is what Peter gives them. Throughout this text, he zooms out. He tells his audience, put whatever pain or whatever suffering that you are enduring into a new picture frame, a bigger picture frame. Peter gives them two new ways of seeing their hardships. First perspective, when we are believers experiencing pressure and persecution, he says, think on God's ancient plan. Think about God's ancient plan. His original plan for his people. Totally unexpected, because Peter here is addressing this congregations all along, right, throughout Turkey, of Gentiles. Let's talk about to Gentiles. They don't have this rich Jewish history behind them. They didn't grow up admiring David or Moses or the prophets. They haven't looked through all the Old Testament and understood this big, they haven't studied the Torah all their lives and memorized it. But if you read 1 Peter, you see a bunch of Jewish references, just a bunch of Jewish references. Chapter 1, verse 10 says, the prophets who prophesied of the grace that would come to you. Right? And then Peter quotes from the Old Testament. He says, all flesh is like grass. You know, everything's come and go. It's very, very, what do you call it? Come and go. Ethereal. Yes, yes. And then Peter calls these Gentiles a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession. Peter's using Israel language for them and Jewish stories with Gentiles, which is super surprising and revolutionary. Peter's doing this so these Gentiles have a bigger picture. Peter's teaching these non-Jewish believers that, hey, you are the plan. All along you've been the plan. You are now the extension of these people that are found in the Old Testament. You are now the people of God. And so just like the Old Testament prophets, you are called to endure like they endured. Endure persecution. Things like being ostracized. Things like being like spending time in the lion's den. Because we are enduring like they endured. And we are one part of them. And most of all, we're suffering like Jesus. Submitting to the difficulties and loving those who persecute us. So that's Peter's first different perspective. So these Gentiles understand, we, all of us as Gentiles, are part of something bigger. We're part of an eternal, long foretold plan. So whatever suffering we go through is part of that, like, hey, plan to develop patience and endurance and submission like Christ. Second perspective, Peter reminds them, hey, you have to have a future perspective. Look at God's permanent reward. God's permanent reward. And this is forward-looking, right? Peter shows these Gentiles this rich history, first, of God's servants suffering in the past. Now he says, look at what's coming. God is going to come and set everything right. Jesus is someday going to return and welcome all of us who believe in him into his presence. We endure humbly because it helps prove that's going to happen. We don't live for the present and present comfort in the here and now. We live for and we have faith in a future coming reward, a future coming kingdom. Peter points to this future reward as early as chapter 1. 1 Peter chapter 1, he says, you are here, you're meant to obtain an inheritance which is imperishable and undefiled and will not fade away, reserved in heaven for you who are protected by the power of God. Okay. And then, is that the last one? Yeah. Yes, there it is. And then Peter ends the whole letter with almost the same promise. He says, after you've suffered for a little while, the God of all grace who called you to his eternal glory in Christ will himself perfect, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. That's the big picture of Peter. He says, in the midst of persecution, you got a couple of anchors. First, look backwards and see, hey, there's this pattern throughout history, a history of believers. All of them have been persecuted, and you are one piece with them. That's your legacy, having faith that God sees and cares for you and has a greater purpose in your suffering. Then our second anchor point is to look forward. Understand that suffering does something in your life. Suffering and enduring like Jesus strips away your material comfort. Sometimes it strips away your health, strips away your immature desires, and reveals this is really what you long for. You long for a spiritual, eternal kingdom spent with Jesus. That's where our verse of study comes in. The overall purpose of the book of 1 Peter. Peter is clear. He repeats this over and over and over again throughout this. In the middle of persecution, because you have a future promise, a legacy of God's plan, in it all, be submissive. That's the big picture. Be submissive in all of this persecution. Be humble. Don't fight back. Bear your cross. Follow the example of Jesus, who went to the slaughter like a sheep, right? And seeing this big picture, Peter has only one active response. He says, be submissive, but you have one active response to do in the midst of all of this persecution. What's that one command? Well, we sanctify Christ as Lord in our hearts. always being ready to make a defense to anyone who asks of us, to give an account for the hope that's in us, yet with gentleness and reverence. That's where our verse comes in. That's the context of our verse. This is the one to do command that Peter calls us to be prepared to make a defense. Be prepared to make a defense. This is how we obey Jesus. He says it in a little different, kind of a weird way. He says, oh, this is how you sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts. He's basically saying, this is how you set apart an area in your life where God is totally in charge. Prepare yourself to make this defense. And we do this with gentleness and reverence. So these are our 2 points today. First, stick out and then be prepared. Stick out and then be prepared. First application, we're to stick out right here. Simply embedded in our verse today. This is a presupposition of our verse. When Peter says people are going to ask you to give an account of the hope that's in you, he's presupposing we are living in such a way with such an extraordinary life and testimony that people, like alarms are going off in their heads. They're going, whoa, what is this person all about? We stick out so much and in such a way that people are not just curious, but they're so curious, they say to themselves, I need to ask them about that, because that's weird. and ask them, hey, what about that? What is this hope that's in you? Why do you behave and respond and value and live so differently than I live? So this is not just some ordinary differentness. This is not, oh, I dress differently, or I look a little different, but it's a hopeful difference that's in the core of you, so that when we are persecuted or we're put down or taunted or belittled, or even when we just go through an ordinary trial of life or something else, right? We respond with kindness and grace and charity and love and genuine Christ-likeness. Peter himself, he sums it up right here in 1 Peter 3. He says, to sum up, all of you be harmonious, sympathetic, brotherly, kind-hearted, and humble in spirit, not returning evil for evil or insult for insult, but giving a blessing instead. Oh, that's hard. Not returning evil for evil or insult for insult. So this is the necessity of the equation. Like before we even get into the equation, this is the prerequisite, the first ingredient in completing the call of Peter. You got to stick out. You got to be super different. Most of us, I think we've had an accessory of some sort. How do I explain this? Well, many, many months ago, right there, right? Okay, I put that up too quickly. Okay, yeah. I had to walk around with one of those. I call it an accessory. I've told this story before. This is like, 25 years ago. I went to my doctor, and my doctor says, you gotta get this lump out. No, actually, I told him, it was the very end of the appointment. I'm like, hey, doc, I got this thing. It's right here, and it's hard, and it kind of hurts. And he's like, and he touches like this little lump in my leg. He's like, oh, that's gotta come out. That's gotta come out. And are you free tomorrow? I'm like, oh, yeah, sure, I'm free tomorrow. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. My doctor was an ex-military doctor. Never get someone who's been in the military, because he's like, oh, let's just take it out tomorrow. He had me laying on a table at 6 a.m. in the morning, and I'm like, okay, you gonna put me out? He's like, nah. We're just gonna drape something over you and I'll give you like a local anesthetic, which I found out during that operation, they don't work too well on me. I felt most of the operation while I was also observing it. It was very interesting. But he's pulling and tugging. It didn't just pop out. There was a lot of cutting going on, and 45 minutes. And he pulls this thing. I would say it's like half a golf ball, like about that big, right? Wasn't cancerous, but all that extraction, that pulling and tugging and cutting, tons of bruising. Like I was bruised all the way up and down my leg. And so, crutch. Like for, I would say like 2 weeks, and then I transitioned to a cane. And boy howdy, I tell you, you're using a crutch, you're like the center of attention for some reason. You cannot go anywhere with a crutch without people stopping you, strangers, like the guy at the car wash. People need to talk to you about, and so you get kind of used to, well, I was at my doctor's office and, I was feeling this thing and tell the whole story. People are just like, I got to talk to you about that. And so much so, 25 years later, I still know the name of it. It's got a name. It was the nodal fasciitis. So nodal fasciitis, because you stick out with a crutch. You've all experienced this. If you had a crutch or a cast, you had a cast. Who doesn't ask you about cast? If you're like pushing around a newborn baby, right? Everybody stops you if you've got a newborn or if you have a puppy. Right? You got a puppy, you can't get anywhere. Everybody stops you about a puppy, starts asking about the puppy. Because they want to interrogate you. They cannot help but ask you. Peter says, live such a kind, humble, loving life. Live so much like Jesus. People cannot help but ask you about where that comes from. That leads to our natural follow-up. And that application is obviously be prepared to testify. They're going to ask you, if you live that life, be prepared to testify, to give an account, share what Jesus has done, who Jesus is, what he's all about. That's it. And we zoom out with our lens. We've done that today. We are prepared to do lots of different things. A lot of different things. You can be prepared to drive a car. You can be prepared to get into an accident. Right? We got our insurance cards. We can prepared to pay for any number of different things with any number of different methods. You got cash, you got like 3 or 4 credit cards, you got Apple Pay and your thing. You're ready to go to the hospital. You got your clean underwear on, you got your insurance card, right? You're ready for a headache, you got your pain relievers, you got your Band-Aids, you got a scratch or something like you're ready for a sunny day with SPF 50 in your purse. God says the big picture is this. Always be prepared to tell people about Jesus. Always be prepared to tell people about Jesus, to testify. And now we know the context of the testimony as well. Here's a group of believers. They were going to be mocked, they were going to be persecuted, they were going to undergo any number of different ways that the government was going to harass them. And Peter's anticipating, saying, if you suffer like this, you suffer like Jesus. Not returning evil with protest, not returning evil with evil or insult with insult. That's when people are going to start asking you, why? People are going to wonder, what's the reason why you do not protest? Why do you not respond in all caps on the internet? Why do you do good to me when all I do is mock you? When they ask you about that, be prepared. Be prepared to tell them that while I was not good, while I was not loving God and not believing in God and not doing what he asked me to do, not loving him, not being responsive to him, Jesus came and he suffered and he died and submitted to abuse and was abandoned and he was wrong on every level on my behalf because of his love for me. His death for my benefit. That's what our life is all about. Getting to those points over and over and over and over again with people. So the question is, are you prepared? This is tricky. Words do not just flow out of my mouth. Words do not just flow out of your mouth. I stumble over my words. I don't know what to say when people talk to me. It came up 2 weeks ago. I was asked to participate in a licensing of a pastor. I don't know if this is like one of those, hey, this is how we make the sausage kind of things. But pastors, leaders in our denomination, they get together and we basically interview a pastor who wants to be licensed in the state of California. And they have to answer those questions well, and then we recommend them for licensure. If you're licensed in the state of California, you can marry people and sign that form. You can bury people and sign the death certificate. You have a few tax advantages here and there too, but that's what licensure does, right? One of the very main questions that was asked, and I didn't ask this question, I was like, was, are you prepared? Can you present what it means to be saved by Jesus in 4 sentences? I can't. I was like, I don't know if I can do that. I was like, can they be compound sentences? Can I run on and on and on and on? 4 sentences. The gentleman did it rather masterfully, but we're going to begin with this morning. There are a lot of ways that people present Jesus and his work. Let's say, if you could sum up what we know of the good news of Jesus, who he is and what he's done for us, like not in sentences, but just bullet points, right? What would you do? I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to bring this out again. And I just thought this up last week. Ooh, my big pen. I thought this up last week because I was like, there's so many ways to present what Jesus has done for us. What kind of outline could I come up with instantly? So, here's an example. This is from, anyone do Walk Through the Bible? Yeah. There is creation, then fall, then Christ, me. That's my outline. Now I can fill in those things, but right, you kind of get the sense, right? Oh, creation, God created everything for an intention of perfection, Eden, all those things. But we fell. Oh, and all of sin fallen short of the glory of God. Oh, how did God come and fix? Oh, well, Jesus came to be our substitution and exchange his life for us. And all we're asked to do now is to put our faith in him and accept the gift that Jesus has given. So that's right. Blah, 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 blah. That's not how I do it. This is how I do it. Ooh, this is just looking down. God's perfection. Our imperfection. Christ's solution. And our reception. I'll give you one more. Who I was. What Jesus did. Who I am. Huh? Bing, bang, boom. Okay, anybody got anything else? Or use something else? You can come up with something right here. God is
Question, what was the reception? Can you explain that?
Oh, that even though Jesus has provided the solution, what we need to do is receive that solution into our lives. And we need to respond in faith. So it's very much like this. Creation, fall, Christ, faith. All of these are very similar. There's something called the three circles, which is there's a circle, and that's where you're at. And this circle is incomplete because it has longing in it. Everybody longs for something. That longing comes from the knowledge that God is the perfect circle. So, yeah. And then the third circle is Jesus, which is also very much like, right? That God is over here, and we want a relationship with him. And Jesus, of course, is the bridge to that relationship through his sacrifice on the cross. Okay. So these are some examples. I just want to start your gears working in your heads of like, okay, what will I do for 2 minutes or 3 minutes? Because this is what it is. This is the opportunity that we are to be prepared for. That's what our verse is all about this morning, being prepared. But also living the life that Jesus has given to us, that when we live the exchanged life of Jesus, we're to look at the act and love and value and be Jesus to people in the world, so that people ask us to give an account of why we're like that. It might sound very different than, hey, can you give me an account of the hope that's in you? No, it might sound like, hey, why do you live the way that you live? You're very different. Or, you got so much going on. How do you do that? How do you do that? Or, why have you done that to me? Why have you loved me with the meal that you brought me? Or why have you helped me even though I did not help you? Why have you forgiven me although I've done wrong to you? They all lead back to the same source of the hope that is in you. We are prepared for so many eventualities in our lives, but this one is the important one. And again, it's 3, 4, minutes or sentences of what Jesus has done in our lives and how he can impact someone else in their lives. It's the opportunity to change the world for one person. Peter asks us, be prepared for that. To get on the stand, to give Jesus credit for all that flows through the life that he's given to us.